One of Bungo Stray Dogs' core strengths is the way in which it builds the relationships between its different characters, how these relationships affect relationships with other characters, and just the way in which these characters' stories are told to us. One of my favorites is the relationship between Okutagawa and Dazai. The relationship between Okutagawa and Dazai in Bungo Stray Dogs is one of the most complex and intriguing relationships in the series. Dazai is Okutagawa's former mentor in the Port Mafia, and their relationship is a real twisted cocktail of admiration, resentment, and a desire for revenge. What really adds a lot more depth and juiciness to their relationship is the fact that both of these characters are highly complex cases on their own. Okutagawa is portrayed as a cold and ruthless character who is willing to commit the most violent crimes in order to further the goals of the Port Mafia, or more importantly himself. He is very intelligent, analytical, and is able to quickly assess situations and come up with plans to counter these. Okutagawa is deeply loyal to the Port Mafia and its leader Mori. He has a strong sense of pride, but maybe a little too much so, as he is very easily provoked when his abilities are questioned. Okutagawa is often seen as a counter-opposite to Atsushi. While Atsushi is kind and empathetic, Okutagawa is cold and ruthless. However, there is a lot more to Okutagawa beneath the surface. Then you have Dazai. Dazai is a very mysterious person whose true intentions are impossible to figure out unless he himself chooses to reveal them. The Dazai we are all familiar with in the present is one who is very light-hearted, overly dramatic, and extremely comical. He's often scolded by Kunikida for being lazy and slacking off. However, Dazai has one of the sharpest minds in the entire series. And despite having this comical appearance and a lust for suicide that is again shown in a comical light, Dazai still has some of his darker personality lingering from his past in the Port Mafia. A past in which his reasons for being in the Port Mafia were to see the true inner nature of mankind through being exposed to death, violence, and people giving in to their deepest, darkest desires. Such was Dazai's infamy back in his Port Mafia days that a saying went around the Port Mafia itself, saying that the greatest misfortune for Dazai's enemies is that they are Dazai's enemies. That's so dark and cool. He was super scary back then, but that side of him is always so intriguing, and I love that some of that lingers in his character even now. So, as we have briefly broken down, these two characters are definitely more on the darker and complex side of the scale from any of the other characters in the series. So, let's look at their relationship and how it has evolved over the course of the series. But before that, if you like what you've heard so far, let me know by hitting that like button for me, as it really helps me out. And if you want more videos such as this, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell to be notified. Arigato. So the relationship dynamic between Okutagawa and Dazai is a really interesting one. For Okutagawa, it is one that is driven by the main and, only focus to gain the acknowledgement and approval of his former mentor. While for Dazai, it was seeing a version of himself within this young Okutagawa and becoming determined to try and guide him down a different path as to not end up like him. The two first met when Okutagawa was 14. Dazai witnessed a boy who had extreme destructive ability, a power that without mentorship would eventually consume and destroy him. Dazai offered Okutagawa the chance to join the Port Mafia and to be recruited within his own unit. Okutagawa was skeptical and even attacked Dazai, but Dazai promised to give Okutagawa anything he wanted in exchange for him joining the Port Mafia, though it would not be an easy path to take. Okutagawa simply asked if Dazai could give him a reason to live, to which Dazai assured him that he would grant him that wish, wrapping his black coat around him, which was his welcoming to the Port Mafia. Now, the training that Okutagawa underwent from Dazai was brutal, and when I say brutal, it was horrific and more like abuse than training most of the time. Dazai's treatment of Okutagawa was often cruel and abusive, pushing him to his limits. However, it was forging him into the fearsome man that he would become. For Dazai, he saw Okutagawa as a sword without a sheath. While he strongly believes that Okutagawa has the potential to be the Mafia's strongest ability user, Okutagawa was still a loose cannon, and Dazai believes someone had to educate him about how to put that blade away. An example of how brutal Dazai was when training and mentoring Okutagawa is when Dazai became enraged after Okutagawa killed their final leads on Mimic before getting any information from them. Dazai, after punching him in the face, pulled out a gun and fired at Okutagawa 3 times. Okutagawa unknowingly learned that he can use his ability for defense, as he had never done this before. Though Dazai was lecturing him and basically telling him he was trash here, underneath it all he was still teaching Okutagawa to be more than what he is. But why does Okutagawa endure Dazai's brutality? Why does Okutagawa suffer this? Well, it's because he longs for Dazai's validation, and he goes through tremendous lengths just to hear a few words of acknowledgement. Dazai, or his validation, is seemingly Okutagawa's reason for living. This has very negative effects though, one of the nastiest of course being jealousy. Okutagawa develops a deadly anger for Sakanosuke Oda, a low-ranking mafioso whom Dazai praises and regards as far superior than Okutagawa himself. We also see this jealousy and anger directed at another individual later on, which becomes one of his greatest obstacles to overcome in gaining the acknowledgement from Dazai that he so desperately seeks. Now, when Dazai leaves the Port Mafia and joins the Armed Detective Agency, their relationship becomes even more complicated. We have Okutagawa who searches endlessly for Dazai, who had not yet accepted his power, going to great lengths such as bombing public buildings in the hopes that it would be noticed by his former mentor. Then you have Dazai, who knows all too well what Okutagawa is up to and what it is that he wants, yet when they do cross paths, he doesn't hesitate to coldly rub his new student Atsushi in his face by saying that he is far superior than you will ever be. The ball is and always has been in Dazai's court. He is the one who decides where the relationship is going, and he goes about it in a very mysterious Dazai way. Okutagawa won't know what Dazai's intentions are until Dazai feels it is time to reveal that. Regardless, Okutagawa continues to seek approval from Dazai whenever he has the opportunity. As a result, Okutagawa is eager to accept practically any personal favor from Dazai, viewing it as an opportunity to impress him. Dazai is of course well aware of Okutagawa's progress. I think he just doesn't want to give Okutagawa what he wants yet, or the lesson he's trying to teach him isn't near completion. Dazai often calls in these favors, so that Okutagawa very reluctantly ends up getting paired with Atsushi in order for the two of them to work together, which is in the hopes of creating the new Twin Dark. Dazai and Okutagawa's relationship is just so very interesting in the fact that we know exactly what Okutagawa wants, yet we don't ever truly know what it is that Dazai is after, as always is the case with Dazai. Okutagawa is literally consumed by Dazai. Even after everything that he's been through, and of course Dazai leaving the Port Mafia himself, Okutagawa is still fiercely loyal to him. We saw very recently in season 5 of the anime that Fukichi offered to be his mentor and to train him to be the strongest hunting dog. However, Okutagawa refused, declaring that no human, not even the war hero Fukichi, could ever replace Dazai as his mentor. Instead, Okutagawa came to the conclusion that if he could overcome Fukichi, he would then gain Dazai's approval, which of course drives Okutagawa even further. Now, what I always find super fascinating about these two is that Bungo Stray Dogs' characters are all of course based off of real-life literary people. The relationship between Osamu Dazai and Ryunosuke Okutagawa in real life has actually been mirrored in the series. IRL Dazai completely idolized Okutagawa and was very shaken when he learned of the news of Okutagawa's suicide. It's just very clever to switch the roles in the series, and it's a cool touch, I must say. Of course, the relationship between Okutagawa and Dazai in the story has a significant impact on Bungo Stray Dogs overall. Their relationship serves as a mirror for the relationship between Atsushi and Dazai, with Atsushi taking on the role of the good student who Dazai treats with kindness and respect, and then you have Okutagawa as the bad student who Dazai treated coldly and brutally. I think it's all basically just to join Okutagawa and Atsushi together, as we have seen them work together before, knowing that when they do cooperate, they are really something not to be messed with. Honestly, can't wait to see where this is all going to go and how it will all end up. Now, while you wait for the next video to drop, why not check out this video here to see the best abilities in Bungo Stray Dogs. Really cool video, a lot of awesome abilities on show. But guys, that is it from me. I'll see you soon for some more. Till then, you take care. Peace, peace.